Well, thank you so much. It's indeed an honor for me to be here with you this evening on what is, I guess, the 164th annual meeting. So a little bit even older than our business. We've been in business for about 153 years. So you guys have been around even longer than we have. And being in the township, this is a township that is near and dear to my heart, one that I was born and raised in. And Jerry told you just a moment ago, we were at high school together. And we're involved in the student government, and I think that when I talk to students today about getting engaged, I think that's one of the most important things that we can do, is talk about getting engaged to try to solve those problems. Certainly one of the messages that I bring to my scouts and to people and young people that I talk to each and every day. You can either complain about it, or you can actually get engaged and do something about it. And one of the things that certainly I wanted to talk about is to say thank you to certainly those citizens here tonight that are going to be honored, and to those citizens that aren't honored but that give of their time, effort, and energy to help make the local government run more efficiently and with your input. That's the way government is designed and supposed to happen. I also want to especially thank Pat and Alan, Joe and Joanne for your help and your leadership with the township over your tenure. Certainly I know at times it can be thankless, but certainly know that there are many out here that really appreciate your service and what you've done for the community. So thank you so much. Jerome asked me to come up and talk a little bit about Washington, D.C., talk a little bit about collaboration and why that's important. Let me just say, from my perspective as a small business owner, someone that is concerned about the lives of the people that I work with, and I'm in the pest control business, for the full disclosure. Most people think that's perfect for Washington, but we won't go there. But what I will say in this business is the fact that I'm concerned about the people that work with me each and every day. It's a role and responsibility I take very seriously because these are families. So, and we want to make sure that they've got upward mobility, an opportunity to put not only food on the table, but to provide an education for their children and be able to have a roof over their head and be able to do the things that are very much representative of the American dream. Now, when people take a look at our country and doing some traveling all over the world, people generally look at the United States with a great amount of envy and the freedoms that we enjoy. And one of the measures, I believe, of a country is how we can take care of those that can't take care of themselves. The social safety net, I think, is important. We want a government that is responsive. Frankly, I want one that's a smaller, more responsive government. And yet, we've gone through a couple of elections recently. We've gone through a presidential election, one that got a tremendous amount of attention and hype, $1 billion or so spent. And yet, we just went through another election recently, the local election, where we didn't have nearly as high a turnout. And I would argue that the local election that we just went through is one of the most important elections that we have. These are our neighbors. These are the people that are conducting government at the most local level, that should indeed have a great impact on what we do each and every day in our schools, in our food pantries, for social services, helping seniors right down the street, providing a place where we want to grow, where we want to raise families, and we want to grow businesses. Now, as we look at the landscape that's out there today, we've got people that are hurting. There's no question about that. We can see that in the national numbers. We can look at our unemployment rate. Our unemployment rate nationwide is 7.7%. In Illinois, it's certainly worse than that. And we see that it's gone down from where it was at 8, 8.5, and even higher. Much of that because many have left the rolls. Many have not been able to find work and are gone, which puts pressure on our township government as well. And just to take one example, visiting food pantries. And it's happened at township after township after township. Those that were donating to these pantries before are the very same people that just a short time later are the ones standing in line to take and get food and assistance from these townships as well. So the question then becomes, how do we move forward? How do we as a nation move forward? I am a firm believer that we need to move forward based upon finding common ground. In my own business experience, it's trying to, if I'm dealing with someone, it's trying to find the area where it can be a win-win, Where, again, I'm not gonna sign a deal with someone unless it's gonna be a good thing for me, and they're not gonna sign that same side of the deal unless it's a good thing for them. We need to find that more, that common ground in government, in all levels of government. One of the things that I will say when it comes time for to look at federal government is that we want to focus on where we disagree. We can find that. So I can find just about anyone in the room. My father's in the back. The good-looking lady next to him is my mom. I could take my mother and we could sit down, and I guarantee you we could find something that we disagree about. But we're going to go nowhere there because she's going to win. Always does. But I'd much prefer to take the time and effort of finding the areas that we agree on. So I can find the most ardent Democrat here in the room. One that you say, we are not going to agree on just about anything. And I'm going to say, you know what? We're going to be able to find some common ground. And if we focus on the common ground, we have an opportunity to really move things forward. Or we could focus on the areas that we disagree. And we can talk passionately about those things that we disagree about. And where are we going to end up? We're going to end up probably just disagreeing with no resolution. We're not going to be able to move the ball forward. So as we look at this 7.7% unemployment, as we look at what local government can do, because what we're really looking for is we're looking for efficient government. We need regulations, right? I'm one that says we want less government intervention in our lives, but we need a government. We need the regulations. We want them to be smart regulations. What else can we be doing? We want to talk about access to capital for those small businesses, for the people that are out of work. How do we get them thriving again? If we look at Illinois today, at kind of that medium-sized government, right? We've got our federal government, our state government, down to township government. If we look at the state of Illinois has all the assets here for us to be growing like crazy, and we're not. And I think we've got a real opportunity. We've got excellent educational institutions. Right? Just take a look around at the schools that we have, research and development. We've got unbelievable natural resources. The jewel of our ecosystem over here in the Great Lakes. We've got research and development corridor. Abbott, Baxter, Takeda, Astellas, Dow, right on down the line. Research institutions, Northwestern, University of Chicago. We actually have about 203,000 students, including some graduate students in the Chicago area alone. 63,000 professionals that are at these institutions that are, again, an unbelievable resource for us. So we have these assets because this is a synergy. Infrastructure. Chicago is a hub for infrastructure. So if I'm trying to go pitch a business to say, where do I want to come? One of the things that I would pitch is the fact that here at New Trier Township, for instance, is a great place to raise a family. Again, the natural resources, the educational institutions, the infrastructure for a business, how I get my goods and services to market, and how I get my raw materials in. We're fortunate. But one of the things that I believe that we're missing here in the state of Illinois is a responsive government from the state that understands that trying to provide a business-friendly mentality. That doesn't mean you let them walk all over. You mean to provide a business-friendly mentality. Let me just leave you with an example and give you one. I went down and visited Mitch Daniels, who was the governor of the state of Indiana a short time ago. He's now over at Purdue, and we wish him well. And I just asked him, well, what is it that you're doing in the state of Indiana that you're attracting all these jobs? And he said, well, there's really a couple of things that I would say, but one of those things is that every single person that collects a paycheck from the state of Indiana has the same mission. Now, I'm a firm believer in mission statements, and if you don't have a mission statement, or you can't tell me what your mission statement is at your business, at your organization, I would argue you don't have one. And they said the mission. I said, I'll bite, Governor. Just, what's the mission? The mission is to bring high-paying jobs to Indiana. And he gave me an example of a 7,000-person medical device company, 7,000 employees that ended up putting their headquarters right outside of Indianapolis. They were choosing between two states, Indiana and another. Illinois was not it. And when they chose Indiana, the governor went and sat down with them and said, what was it about our pitch to you that made you choose Indiana? And they said, well, all things being equal, we need licenses to operate in our state. We want to make sure that we've got licenses, that they're playing by the same set of rules as everyone else. We asked the question, how fast could we get our licenses? In the first state, the response was, well, the agenda's full this month. Next month you'll be on the agenda. If you cross your T's and dot your I's, you'll get your licenses the following month. So that's 90 days, which sounds about right, what you might hear from state government. In Indiana, they said it's a 7-person board. We'll call an emergency session. If you've crossed your T's and dotted your I's, we're not going to bend any rules for you. You'll have your licenses in 3 days. Now, those 7,000 people are in Indiana today. Those 7,000 people have to buy bread and milk. They're going to the schools. If they didn't make the trek with them from where the company was before, that means those Hoosiers are actually, more Hoosiers are getting hired. Those are good, high-paying jobs. And that really didn't cost Indiana anything. That was talking about providing customer service. And my challenge to government at all levels is, are we providing that same customer service? And I would argue that what we want from our township government, that's as close to the people as we get, is we want that customer service feeling that they're out there working for us, that they're helping those seniors, that they're providing those with developmental disabilities those opportunities. And those are some of the real bright spots that we point to here in township government. And so, again, it doesn't happen, and too often we fall into the trap. They're the folks that have been elected, they're the ones that are supposed to go make it run, I don't have to do anything. Especially here in the local governments, we want you to get engaged. An active group of citizens is vitally important, that you get engaged, you make your voices heard. Positively and negatively, because frankly, criticism is important. So I do think that we've got an opportunity going forward. I think from a nationwide perspective, trying to get more people back to work and implementing some of the legislation that's common sense in terms of bipartisan legislation. And I'm a firm believer, if it's not bipartisan legislation, chances are it's not going anywhere. It's just a good idea. You have to get and you have to do a job to sell on both sides of the aisle that this is going to be something that's good for the American public so that we can move things forward. Now, some of the things that you probably didn't hear is that during the 112th Congress, we actually passed about 30 jobs legislation, pieces of legislation. All of those were bipartisan, some wildly bipartisan. But again, a lot of the divisiveness is what sells papers. That's what gets on the news. And I would argue that what we really need to do is we need to focus on wins and how can we get people to work together. That certainly would be much more palatable for most, because if I've heard it once, I've heard it 1,000 times from people. How do we end the gridlock in Washington? Are you frustrated? Show of hands, who's frustrated with what's going on in Washington, D.C.? Do you think that same thing happens in other forms of government? There's no telling what people can do if you don't mind who takes credit for it. There's obviously that problem for a lot of egos in different areas in Washington. Frankly, I don't care who takes credit for what goes on, but I do think we have an obligation to start moving things forward. And that means it's not all one way or all the other. But we have to forge that kind of common ground, middle area. Because without it, we're not going to be able to focus on the things that are critical. Education. And I think STEM education is one of those things that, again, will allow us to be more globally competitive. Who's against preparing students to take jobs in the 21st century? Show of hands. Okay. Nobody's opposed to trying to make sure that we're preparing students to take jobs in the 21st century. Who's opposed to access to capital for small business? Right? Nobody's opposed to doing some of those things. So again, as we focus on some of these things that I think have broad support that's out there, infrastructure is one of those things that, again, many on the Republican side of the aisle say, that's big spending. I happen to be an infrastructure advocate. That's how we move commerce. That's how businesses thrive. Go talk to a business and ask them, when they're looking at where they place business, where do they go? They go where there's infrastructure. That's one of the things that I think is one of the critical things that government can do and should be taking a hold of. So listen, I can talk for a long time. And Jim, apparently you've got to stay as long as I talk. Everybody else could leave, but as long as the meeting's going, they can talk. But I understand that there's going to be an opportunity for questions. We can open it up to questions. Is that right, Jim?
That's correct.
Okay, so I'm happy to talk to you about anything you want to talk about in terms of what's going on in Washington, some of the experiences that we had, and I'm happy to go down whatever path you want to go down, whether it be Illinois, whether it be education, whether it be infrastructure, whether it's energy, another thing that I think is vitally important for us. These are things that I think, again, will help enable Illinois and the United States to get more globally competitive. Who's got some questions? Yes, sir.
Illinois has more coal than Saudi Arabia has oil. What can we do to bring coal back online as a source of power? Is that
The question is that Illinois has more coal than Saudi Arabia has oil. What can we do to bring coal back in line so that we can, again, talk about energy and making ourselves more energy independent? So as we talk about, again, finding the common ground, and by the way, thank you for your service to our country, I appreciate that. As we talk about common ground, we want, and I think you're going to find both sides of the aisle will be happy to say we want to become more energy independent as a nation. What I would say in terms of at least what I've talked about in the past is that we should give a green light in our tax code for wind, solar, geothermal, some of these new advances that are coming online with regard to energy. Many of them are inefficient today, but let's at least encourage them that we want them to continue to invent. Right? We want to continue that next new thing. So that would be one. Second thing I would say is that